Hi, good afternoon everyone. I hope you can hear me okay. This is Nicola Ball from the Talking Rooms, and today's presentation webinar is regarding childhood and teenage anxiety disorders. So just a little bit about this particular presentation today, just in case you don't have your volume up and you're only seeing the visual representation. This is audio and visual, so not all points will be in the actual presentation. I might be talking around them, so remember to turn your volume up. And if you don't want people to hear what's going on for you, just stick some earphones in. Hopefully today the presentation won't last longer than an hour. I'll try and keep it as brief as possible. And if you do have any questions that you thought about after the presentation, then please do email me at nicola@thetalkingrooms.com, and I'll try and address as many of these as possible. I think what might be useful for people as well, if you don't have your child or teenager with you when you're listening to this, it might be worth once you get the recording, sitting them down and they can listen through. And also any parents or partners or grandparents or people that are involved in your children's life, this may also prove invaluable also. So what we're going to cover off today, I've just put together in very typical CBT fashion. We always start sessions with an agenda, so we know what we're looking at. So I'm going to just do a little bit of an introduction on myself and why I'm really passionate about child and teenage anxiety. And then we'll talk about, what is anxiety, where does it come from, what different types of anxiety disorders are there. And also, I'm going to keep this quite brief, but in terms of for some people who might not know what CBT is and how it can help, so I wanted to do a little section on that. And then I've created a section on how to help your child with anxiety and a variety of different resources and help. And I've created also a PDF to go alongside that so that you'll have that, you have to print out the whole thing. And then I'm also going to introduce you to a programme called Brave Online, which is a specific online programme developed for children and teenagers with anxiety based on CBT. So I think that should be us. And again, any questions once you've went through this, then please feel free to email me at nicola@thetalkingrooms.com. So here's a little bit about me. As I said, I'm Nicola Ball. I'm founder of the Talking Rooms, and I'm also a qualified cognitive behavioural therapist. I'm also a mum. I've got two children, Maya, who's pictured here with me, who's 13, and a son, Aidan, who has just turned 11. I guess what inspired me initially to create this kind of platform to have a discussion and a dialogue about childhood anxiety was because I experienced it with my own daughter and realised quite quickly how difficult that really was as a parent to deal with. Now, I felt like, at the time I had a lot of resources in terms of tools because I was working with clients who had anxiety disorders, but it wasn't necessarily the same strategies that you could use for children and teenagers. So, Maya and I did little bits and bobs together, and things escalated pretty quickly. So I'll take it back a little bit. For me and for my daughter, she was always probably quite an anxious child. What I would think of as what I now know as an anxious child, but I just thought she was just really a bit of a worrier, always worrying about something. What if this and what if that? But it didn't sort of hold her necessarily back. It didn't get in the way of her living her life until she started high school. And then it became quite quickly apparent that this was now becoming a much, much bigger issue. So, it started off with lots of tummy aches and getting sent home from school, which I'd started to recognise as anxiety because, within half an hour of returning home, she was fine. So we did look at a variety of different options, and one of which was obviously therapy. I know how effective CBT can be. As a therapist, I've also experienced quite extensive CBT therapy, and I knew this would help. I did engage with the school, who I have to say were incredibly supportive, in terms of what could be done about the immediate things that were causing my anxiety within the school environment. It wasn't really playing out anywhere else in her life. She's a dancer. She was able to perform at dancing with what we would call, normal nerves. It's anxiety it's okay to be nervous. It's perfectly human. But it's when it gets in the way of being able to function in your day-to-day life, it becomes more of an issue. So in that sense, I worked with Maya myself in collaboration with the school, and also Maya had one-to-one therapy with a CBT therapist, because I'm a mother, first and foremost, not a therapist. So it was important for me that was addressed. Now, that's not to say that there's been a magic wand and Maya is a completely different person overnight. Of course not, but what CBT has taught her is some tools to manage. And so what Maya was diagnosed with was generalised anxiety disorder with panic disorder. And that, because the anxiety wasn't necessarily dealt with in the beginning, it did escalate into panic disorder. So we've now got that under control through therapy. And there is some still residual anxiety there surrounding specific things about school, so sitting tests and public speaking. So that's the next chapter of our kind of work together. I think what's been amazing for me and what made me really, really curious was, what about other people? How do they cope with this? What about other kids? How do they communicate? Because Maya and I could work together on that, because my background and what I was doing and what I was at the time studying, which was childhood anxiety. And I started to become really, really curious about other people and, opening the dialogue. And of course, what we're seeing as therapists more and more is quite young people coming through our doors. Kind of late teens, early 20s, and I've had inquiries from people with children as young as the age of 6. So it did get me to thinking about, well, how can other people be helped? Because these disorders clearly exist. Sounds like there's lots of anxious children out there, but my experience also was when as much as the school were supportive, they were also quite limited. We don't have a counsellor in school, so that wasn't an option. The next stage would be to be referred to children mental health, and the waiting lists are huge. I know that particular resource is very stretched, and they have to prioritise the caseload that they get. So perhaps for somebody like Maya with generalised anxiety, it wouldn't necessarily be seen as a priority in the beginning. However, her behaviour may have started to escalate if that hadn't been addressed so early on. So that takes me to really, where I kind of started in this journey, because as much as I wanted to really help Maya, and of course, and help my daughter come out the other side of this, it made me really curious as to what about other people, and what resources can they tap into, what's available, and how could that potentially help people and parents and children and teenagers? What could this experience, how could other people benefit from this experience? So that's a little bit about me, and my lovely daughter Maya, who is, as I say, she has come on leaps and bounds, and she still has some things to work through. But I think what an incredible set of tools to have at the age of 13, kind of under your belt. I almost wish I had them at that age. So I'm going to talk a little bit more as we go through the presentation, but I just wanted to give you a little bit of an insight into who I am and why I kind of want to speak about this. So let's talk about anxiety, and that's what we're all here for, and talk about, what really is anxiety. So probably everybody listening to this will have experienced some sort of anxious feeling, and it's that feeling of fear. Anxiety is, a historical, almost sort of ancient part of us as humans. And it comes from a part of the brain called the amygdala, which when triggered, fires the fight or flight response. And that's that sort of feeling of, should I run or should I stay and fight, or should I freeze? It's actually fight, flight, or freeze now. And what actually happens physiologically in the body is prepared for to fight or to flight. So that's why anxiety feels so intense, because the body has to, push lots of blood out into your legs and your arms so that you can run or you can fight. You might find if it's your child that's anxious, they might need to urinate or to go to the bathroom, because the body is getting rid of things that it doesn't need in that moment, so that it can fight or flight. So, historically, obviously, we had these kind of responses in us because, back in the day of the caveman, we needed this response to make sure we didn't get eaten by bears or tigers. So anxiety is designed to keep us safe, but what it doesn't do is necessarily help us in situations that are not dangerous. So, for children and anxiety, children and teenagers, their anxiety might be triggered in school, and school's not necessarily a dangerous situation to be in, but the response that they are feeling is essentially like they are, coming up against a bear or a tiger. So that's just to give you a bit of context of what is going on for them. And that feeling is very real. And, it's that sense of, it leaves people with that sense of just real genuine fear and panic, and just that sense of dread. As I say, it's perfectly normal. We're all humans. You worry about things to feel a bit of anxiety when you're going to do a bit of public speaking. And, in fact, actually, whilst I started to do this recording, I got a wee sort of sense of a bit of anxiety about it as well. But going for job interviews for us adults, but when we're younger, different things will trigger a little bit of anxiety. It's when that anxiety stays and the situation is no longer there, but the sense of fear and dread and panic stays. And also what starts to happen is the amygdala sort of starts making a checklist almost. Well, that's a scary situation, so I'll respond with the same response in any other given situation that's similar. So what we try and essentially do with therapy is create new neural pathways where the amygdala doesn't hold all the power. And there's lots of fantastic books for children with anxiety as well, which sort of creates a character out of the amygdala, because the amygdala is trying to keep us safe, but actually it's stopping us from really living our lives and having fun. And in fact, I'll put some of the links to some of those books at the end as well, because they're really, really useful. And I actually used one. I'm just trying to remember the name of it. It's going out my head, but I will put it in at the end of this presentation. So that's kind of what anxiety is. It's fight or flight. It's a response to danger. However, when it's not actually a wanted dangerous situation, but that feeling is very real of fear and panic, that is what a person with an anxiety disorder will be experiencing. As I say, it's really normal, and what we're finding is more and more young people will experience an anxiety condition at some point. So it's really, really common. So I think what's really important for you as a parent and for your children is to realise they're not alone. And I think that was something, certainly when Maya and I initially discussed what was going on for her, she felt like there was something wrong with her, and she didn't want to sort of address it because she felt like some sort of freak, that nobody else would feel this way or experiencing life in this way. But it's really, really common. When you think about 1 in 6, I don't know if your kids are at primary school or at secondary school, how many kids are in a classroom. That's a lot of kids that will be experiencing it, and there'll be a lot of kids within your children's peer group also experiencing it. So the more that we open dialogue, the more that we can help our children and each other. I thought, again, what would be useful, particularly if you're going to show this to your kids, would be some links from actual kids talking about their experience of their anxiety, and some famous people and some bloggers who have also put some content out there with regards to their experience of their anxiety and other mental health disorders. And I think it really just helps to open the dialogue for our children to be able to have a conversation without fear, and be able to understand that what they're experiencing is perfectly normal, and it can be helped, it can be treated. So for you or for your child, you may have experienced or visualised or seen and experienced the symptoms of anxiety, and they present differently in everyone and to various different degrees in terms of intensity. But this is a list of just some, but these are not exhaustive. But you start to feel quite lightheaded or dizzy, a really dry mouth, start to experience heart palpitations, sweating or shivering, or your face going red, having trouble sort of breathing, regulating your breath, so either gasping for breath or quite shallow breathing, and kind of general restlessness, like almost like you want to get out of here. And it can also really, really affect sleep, trouble getting to sleep, or once people get to sleep, it can interrupt their sleep, so they can wake up actually feeling anxious during the night. And quite a common one, particularly in really young children, is that sense of feeling sick. So that's almost like the feeling of anxiety in their belly, and because of their age and experience, don't really know how to communicate what it is, but it's the same sort of sensation as feeling a wee bit sick in their tummy. Now, obviously, if your child is experiencing any of these and you've not seen a GP, certainly I'd recommend that you have anything like this checked out, to rule out any kind of medical issues. But for children suffering with anxiety, a lot of that can go on, and that's pretty intense. I mean, it sounds intense just saying it, but that's what they're experiencing. As I said earlier, this feels real. It is real for them. So not only are they feeling anxious, they've got all these kind of associated physiological sort of symptoms going along, and sometimes that can make you feel like there's something wrong with you. Quite common. I was actually chatting to a friend the other day who works in A&E, and we were talking about anxiety, and she was telling me, a lot of people presenting A&E with anxiety because they feel, like they're having a heart attack, or because they're having heart palpitations. So it's really key to make sure that what your child is experiencing is anxiety and not a medical issue. Not to be alarmed once you know that this is actually connected to anxiety, and there's various different things that you can do to sort of calm that down and alleviate the physiological symptoms of anxiety. I think it's important to address that there isn't sort of one size fits all. This is why my child is anxious. There's lots of different reasons why people are anxious, adults included. But there is a lot of evidence to support a variety of different avenues where anxiety can come from. So you may be genetically predisposed to being anxious, you or your parents, and subsequently your child might be predisposed to being more susceptible to being anxious or easily stressed. It can also be learned. So, whoever your children are exposed to, if they see healthy coping strategies for stress, or not. It can just take one sort of experience of that to start to generate anxiety in a child. Again, there's lots of different evidence behind brain chemistry in terms of structure. We talk about the amygdala, which is that where our fight or flight response lives, and also our emotions can be stored. Another part of the brain is the frontal cortex, where we regulate emotions. And there's lots of evidence to suggest, things like CBT and mindfulness make a difference in terms of structure of the brain. So the size of the amygdala can shrink, and there can be improvements in the frontal cortex in terms of emotional regulation. Anxiety can also come from other areas, a trauma or life experience. It could be, lots of perhaps moving houses or moving schools or divorce or death or friendships, bullying. It could come from a variety of different aspects. in terms of society, does your children sort of live on their phone, and who are they interacting with, and what information are they immersed in? And also lifestyle, so if your kid's not playing Fortnite, then, what are they doing? But in all seriousness, in terms of lifestyle, are they having enough exercise? What are they eating? A high sugar diet is related. There is some evidence to support that can sort of facilitate some sort of anxiety disorders. Things like energy drinks is an example for that. I can't remember the name, and I don't think I've ability to kind of name brands anyway, but these kind of energy drinks that are heavily marketed to teenagers that have a really high percentage of caffeine actually trigger the feelings of anxiety. So there's a lot of different things that it can come from, and we do have to, when I work with clients on a one-to-one basis, these are all different factors that we will look at to try and understand the full picture of what's going on. But I think the important thing is there's not really one particular reason or another in terms of where the anxiety comes from. But I think what's important is to recognise, is it anxiety, and what can we do to support it? Now, we've talked a wee bit about what anxiety is and what it feels like, where it comes from. So I want to talk a wee bit more about the specifics of anxiety disorders in children and adolescents. And some of the common anxiety disorders would be separation anxiety, specific phobia, generalised anxiety, and social phobia. In addition, you also have obsessive compulsive disorder and post-traumatic stress, and also panic disorder. So anxiety looks at lots of different specifics with regards to different diagnoses for children and adolescents. I think when I came across this fact, I thought, that's really interesting. All of these are treatable, but 80% of children with a diagnosable disorder are not getting treatment. That can be for a number of different reasons in terms of recognition, diagnosis, and availability for treatment. And I think, again, that comes back to what I was saying earlier about resources that are available to us as parents to help our children. Children are not necessarily resourced to go and find the solutions for how they're necessarily feeling, but we are, and I think we could definitely be looking, I guess, as a kind of a community of parents to be looking to reduce the amount of children that are accessing treatment for their anxiety disorders. I'm just going to go into each of the different sort of anxiety disorders in a wee bit more detail and give them a name. So it might help you to identify maybe what's going on for your child. So if we firstly have a look at separation anxiety, and it's fairly self-explanatory, and it is characterised by excessive worry about being separated from either their home or for their major significant kind of caregiver. The fear really is something bad happening either to themselves or the caregiver when they are separated. And it's really, really common in infants to display anxiety, and it's really common as part of children's development. However, when it becomes an issue is, when the kind of, I guess, the characteristics of separation anxiety become an ongoing battle. So you might find, getting your child into school in the morning, there's, lots of tears and tantrums, lots of stomach upsets, feeling a bit sick, because they're sort of almost either when they're in the experience, when they're, going to school, for example, or they might start to even feel that at night time before going to school, so they start to anticipate it. They may also be experiencing difficult sleeping alone at night, or having nightmares. And it can be really difficult for parents, because sometimes, if you're taking a kid to nursery or to school and this is happening in the morning, I guess we're all guilty of, we've got a million and one things going on in our mind, but this could be what is going on for your child. As it says here, the disorder's more common in younger children and less in kind of teenage years. And I guess if it's been an ongoing issue, that's when you would start to maybe consider that as a disorder. So generalised anxiety disorder, or what you might see referred to when you do some research on this, is GAD, generalised anxiety disorder. And that's characterised by excessive and unrealistic worry. So there's, a what if and a constant expectation of different things that could possibly happen. And in order for it to be diagnosed as a disorder, it has been known for probably a period of about 6 months or longer. I think I touched on it earlier, but I said, when my daughter was younger, I probably would have described her as a bit of a worrier. And what they really have difficulty with is checking their worry. So their heads, in terms of their thoughts, will be, what if this happens? What if that happens? So, for example, what if they sleep in before they go to bed? Or what if I'm late for school? Or what if the teacher shouts at me? Or what if I fail my exam? Or and that can manifest into a kind of almost a snowball effect for children suffering with GAD. Again, really, really common, and it can include things like schoolwork or generally not being good enough in terms of judgment from their peers. In terms of they worry about their family's health, their own health. Watching the news can be quite stressful in terms of world events. Actually, something that came to mind was the terrorist attack at the Ariana Grande concert. There has been a kind of upsurge from that particular kind of age group, particularly females, that are not wanting to attend concerts because they've kind of watched and obviously seen atrocities of what happened that day, but they have become anxious about those particular situations. You might also see other symptoms being displayed, so kind of irritability, difficulty concentrating, and that can be in class, at home, doing homework, and being quite tense and just real difficulty with sleep disturbance. These children are really living in a kind of almost state of high alert all the time, and it's pretty exhausting. And it's really important to be able to help your child understand and maintain self-care. But I'm going to apologise if my voice is going as this is going on, but hopefully I'll hold down till the end. So yeah, there can be a lot of difficulty. And also a lot of that can be characterised by being a teenager. So obviously we've got huge hormonal changes. There could be changes in schools, making the change from primary to secondary in terms of new peer groups and new friends. There could be situations, for example, where there's bullying or there could be stuff going on at home. So there's lots of contributing factors here, and it's really important to get in front of that if that's something that kind of resonates with you and your child. Again, another common anxiety is social phobia. So for some children, they may find it really, really difficult to speak up in terms of answering questions in a classroom or performing in terms of athletics or dancing or musicals. But it can also affect them when they've been invited to parties or they have to meet new people or speak to adults. And for some children, eating in public or eating in front of people can be difficult. And it's really down to this kind of fear of scrutiny, judgment, and what people will think about them. So, there's their fear is that they will be humiliated or embarrassed in some way and judged by others in a negative way. So what you start to see is social withdrawal from children like that. So they start to become avoidant of situations that would put them in an anxious state, a socially anxious state. So, you start to see there's poorer social skills, that there's fewer friends, and they maybe perhaps do less or kind of push back on doing some of the kind of recreational things that perhaps they enjoyed before. So this is, talked about social phobia there, this is specific phobia. And, again, hugely common for children and teenagers to have, different fears. So fear of the dark is probably the main one. But it could be things like bees and wasps and thunderstorms, or having an injection, or it could be a list of different specific phobias. The list could be anything really. And when they're confronted with that situation, it does make the children feel extremely anxious and distressed. Actually, somebody emailed me during the week and about their child had a phobia of balloons, which is surprisingly common. But you think, well, how does that impact their life? Well, a child going to a party in balloons, that child starts to then anticipate going to the party, and then the associated anxiety that they will experience, because they don't have the tools at this point to deal with that phobia, will result in them usually trying to avoid that situation, so therefore missing out on their parties. So it's really important, if you've got a child with a specific phobia that is interfering with day-to-day functioning, or their ability to have joy in their life, that this is addressing it, because it can be really, really, really challenging for children. Another anxiety disorder, obsessive compulsive disorder, and I'm, probably one of the sort of, I guess, more well-known disorders, is somebody was saying the other day, oh, just have a wee bit of OCD, or I'd like a wee bit of OCD. But in actual fact, OCD is a hugely debilitating disorder, and it's characterised by the presence of intrusive thoughts, these thoughts that are recurrent and ongoing. And that's the obsessive part, that's the obsession. And the way, in order to alleviate or at least neutralise the feelings that are associated with those, is by the compulsions, which are the repetitive behaviours. So again, children, people, adults are different in terms of what those obsessions and compulsions will be. But some of the things might be about concern about harming themselves or others. It might be a contamination fear, so they might not want to touch things. They might have kind of a superstitious ideology. They may be consumed by sort of religious obsessions. And some of the compulsions, you might be familiar with, might be, compulsive washing, checking, doors are locked, things that they're touching, keeping things in, a very specific order, or also hoarding. OCD is a debilitating condition, and it does have an impact on everybody. And in terms of school performance, it really can be debilitating. It's really important to work with that, but something to note is this, if you recognise that those kind of things in your child, is there marked distress, and are these compulsions time consuming and therefore interrupting their daily functioning, so their ability to go about their day. PTSD, or post-traumatic stress disorder, again, is an anxiety disorder that develops following exposure to a traumatic or physically threatening event. And we tend to treat PTSD generally about 6 months after said event has happened. And sometimes that can be the actual anxiety or the disorder can appear much quicker, or it can take a long time for parents and children to kind of recognise what their maybe anxiety is connected to. Traumatic events can be really anything in terms of what your child has experienced. So they may have been a part of the traumatic event, or they may have witnessed it, seen someone being knocked over, for example. So also PTSD is connected to abuse, physical, sexual, mental, and children may experience, or they may be re-experiencing their trauma in different ways. So in terms of how they play or their nightmares, and having quite distressing recollections, because PTSD is almost like a snapshot being flung back into that moment, mentally and physically, to feel all the sensations of that. And again, it's really important to get some help for your child if that is what you think is maybe perhaps going on for them. Makes sense. The child will try and avoid situations that are related to the traumatic event. So, for example, it could be that, I don't know, an example might be they were on a bus and there was an accident on the bus, and then they may start to have an anxiety about sort of getting on the bus again. And now we've got panic disorder. I think a lot of people are kind of familiar with what that might look like in terms of experiencing it. But it really is like a very quick, sudden onset of intense fear and discomfort, where the fear is just unbelievably powerful, that it instantaneously gives you, at least 4 physiological symptoms. So it could be heart palpitations, sweating, trembling, dizziness, breathlessness, nausea. Those pins and needles can be in your fingers and your toes. And for people experiencing that, it can be terrifying. And misinterpreting those symptoms and thinking there's something wrong can actually exacerbate the panic attack. Agoraphobia is a secondary disorder to panic disorder, and that is essentially avoiding the places in which panic may occur. So, people, children in particular, might start to avoid, again, school, classrooms, public transport, crowded environments, or just being outside the home in general. The kind of evidence suggests that it is quite rare in young children, and does develop in kind of teenage years. And I think it's something certainly I am seeing a lot more of in terms of teenagers presenting with panic disorder. So when we talk about all those different anxiety disorders, usually you have a primary condition, essentially, and then what we call a comorbid disorder. So that will be something that goes hand in hand, if you like, with it. And it may have developed after the event. But it's really, really common for children to have another anxiety disorder with their anxiety disorder. So they may have generalised anxiety disorder with panic. They may have PTSD with panic. There could be a variety of different things going on there. There is also a common tendency for there to be an overlap between anxiety and clinical depression. So you may be experiencing that with your child, and I think it's really important to address both. But if you are seeking therapy, the diagnosis will work with, I guess, what's essentially the most, apparent disorder, the one that needs to be addressed first. Something I'm going to touch on slightly is also self-harming. You've probably read a lot about this now. There seems to be, evidence to suggest that there is an increase in self-harming and certainly in teenagers. And I don't know all the stats and facts behind it, but it is alarming in terms of, self-harming and what can be done there. This particular presentation isn't going to go into real specifics about self-harming, but what I would say is, if you have any concerns about your children or your teenagers being either self-harming or suicidal, seek help. And there'll be some in the crisis sheet that I'll also send you. So if you find yourself in crisis, please utilise these services to support you and your family. So now we've covered off all the different types of anxiety disorders and how they go hand in hand together, and also perhaps with depression. And I wanted to talk to you a wee bit about CBT. Now, obviously, I am hugely passionate about CBT because I am a CBT therapist. But what I really like about CBT is it's short term, it's goal orientated, and to me it's just really practical stuff. It's really looking at thoughts, feelings, and behaviours. So imagine a kind of triangle that goes round, and they're all related to each other. And that's what we look at. So in any given situation, we will look at what the thought was and the associated feeling. And when we look at anxiety in particular, that's what we're talking about. So, the fear will, relate to an avoidance, because that's what anxiety will be. They will have these experiences of anxiety and they will try to avoid ways of feeling like that again. So CBT helps you to cope with anxiety and change the kind of thought processes that patients are kind of almost jumping on and running with. And it's really effective, and I've seen fantastic, incredible changes in children, in teenagers and adults, particularly adults who had suffered with anxiety. I read something recently, and it was 90% of adult mental health issues start in childhood. So again, that's why I'm really passionate about working with people and their parents and their children, so that this doesn't carry on through their life and it's almost like carrying two big heavy suitcases through the rest of your life. With a bit of treatment, they can put them down and start to enjoy life again. There's lots of evidence. If you want to do some further reading, I've kept some information here in terms of the effectiveness of CBT for childhood anxiety. This is well established stuff. This has been around for quite a long time. It's been evidenced, it's been researched, and it is effective. So again, that's why I like it as well. It's not we're not kind of pussyfooting about or making this up as we go along. There is proven techniques and proven treatment plans to work with childhood anxiety. So, as I mentioned, when we talk about kind of CBT, we're looking at kind of thoughts and feelings and behaviours. Specifically, what we want to look at is the interventions for childhood anxiety and what that really involves. And it's, there's been a variety of models developed to look at fear and anxiety for children and for adults, and these have been applied and they've been tested and they've been researched. So Lang's model, which is a really effective model for working with childhood anxiety, exactly as I mentioned earlier, thoughts and feelings. So we look at this kind of three-pronged model, these three systems that are going on within each and every one of us, but in particular your children and your teenagers. So we're having a physiological response to their anxiety, and things from sweating, elevated heart rate and upset tummies, to their behavioural experiences of their anxiety, where they're trying to avoid their feared situation, or they're crying, or they're angry. There's lots of different behaviours associated with it, and each of those are individual to your child, and also cognitive. So what is going on in the thought process to to estimate that there's a threat in this given situation. So that's the kind of model we use to look at. Now, Lang's model also suggests that even just having one of these systems and having that distorted, that can lead to what we call maladaptive anxiety, so not like normal anxiety. And I think something that's really important to say also is, there isn't a cure for anxiety. Anxiety is part of who we are as humans, and it serves a purpose to keep us safe. It's just about aligning the anxiety to the threat and understanding the thoughts, the behaviours, and the responses that are happening to be able to bring them into line. So that's what treatment for anxiety sort of looks at, and it looks at these kind of three areas. So this is just a wee sample of a treatment model. Now this would be something that we would use if we were in one-to-one therapy with clients. So let's first of all look at the physiological responses. So we teach various different techniques to children. Again, it depends on their age in terms of how we teach it. So we're looking at breathing retraining, progressive muscle relaxation. So that's where we go through each part of the body and we tighten each muscle and relax each muscle. We use kind of imaginary situations where we have like safe place, so that the brain is associated to being in a relaxed state. It's really important to be able to help your children develop what we call kind of healthy coping strategies for those physiological responses as opposed to just avoidance. And it does take a wee bit of time, and some things work for others and some things, work better for other people. We're all individual in that sense. So we do treat each child, with regards to what is really going on for them. And that's why it's important to explore what those physiological symptoms are for your child. We also look at cognitive techniques. So I touched on it earlier in terms of what the thoughts are, but we'll look at what are these kind of anxiety-provoking situations and what thought is going on there. So one thing that might become apparent is your child is a catastrophizer. Their thought process may be always in what we call unhelpful kind of thinking styles, to always find the worst in every possible scenario. And therapy sort of basically works to kind of challenge that. It's like, well, what's your experience of that and how likely is that to happen? And again, over time, there's lots of great tools out there in terms of monitoring what those thoughts are. And then we start to look at, let me go back to the tools that are monitored. I think I've put it on the list, and if not, I will do it. There's a great app you can download, and it's called a thought diary. Because most kids like to be on their phones, and it's private. It's not a bit of paper. It's not like something you have to write down, so it doesn't feel like homework. But they can just kind of capture their thoughts on there. And that helps, a therapist to really see what's going on in that moment. So when they're having anxious experiences, we can really work through what the thoughts and what was really underlying that, and help to restructure and give that a different sort of balance. Something you might notice as well with your child, particularly if they've been experiencing this for a while, is their self-esteem might be quite low. So their kind of inner critic, if you like, how they talk to themselves might be quite negative. And that's, again, like walking about with the two heavy suitcases and then somebody shouting abuse in your ear at the same time. So, we work with children to change those perceptions that they have, those kind of almost like life-limiting beliefs and self-chatter. So there's a lot of work done in terms of the cognitive component, and that's where real change starts to happen. So the last part of the treatment model is with regards to the behaviour, and we look at what we call exposure. Now that can happen in various different types of ways, depending on really what the fear is and what the situation is in terms of what is triggering your child's anxiety. This is a really, really important part, but it has to be done very, very gently, because otherwise, if the child doesn't have the coping tools to deal with the physiological responses to their anxiety, and you sort of flood them as a type of exposure, depending on what their fear is, that can be just far too much, and they'll back away from being from treatment. So we look at what we call like a fear hierarchy. So starting from the bottom, something that's not scary at all, to the top of the kind of ladder, if you like. What is the scariest thing that you could possibly do? So it might be standing up and speaking in class. It might be going to a party. Whatever that might be, and we work through each stage of that and manage the child's anxiety until they can get to that end point. And what a wonderful day that is for children. It's incredible because their self-esteem and their self-worth grows and grows as each stage is completed because they're able to achieve it and they're able to manage their anxiety. It's really, really quite a wonderful thing to see. We also look at different ways of problem solving. So instead of trying to sort of avoid and get away from anxiety-provoking situations, what else can be done? And that, again, that can be quite challenging because their go-to response might be, "Oh, I'll just not do that." So it's about building the child's resilience and coping skills to be able to look at problems from almost a different viewpoint. And again, really, really successful part of treatment. What's also really important is parents, as you guys are, there more than a therapist could ever possibly be with your child, is engaging also in the process of therapy and understanding, what therapy is, what anxiety is, what CBT is, and what kind of work is being done in the room together. Now, obviously, one-to-one therapy is confidential. The child is able to express themselves, but part of our duty of care also is if there is any risk, that parents are made aware of that. But it's also really important for the parent to understand, to help the parent to understand that this anxiety and this issue for the child is really quite distressing. And what kind of strategies can the parent be also implementing at home to help build that resilience and those healthy coping strategies going forward with our child. We also look at things like relapse prevention because, sometimes we take a wee stumble back. And as I say, the job is not to, eradicate anxiety, it's to reduce and make it manageable. So we look at relapse prevention, and usually once a child has been in therapy, it tends to be kind of model usually works between 8 to 12 sessions one-to-one. It could be less, could be more, just depends on exactly the extent of the issue. But usually a follow-up, maybe a month or 2 months later, and then a 6-month follow-up, just to see how things are going, just to check in. So when we look at kind of CBT and the treatment and, the anxiety disorders, there's that's a lot of information, and I hope it's been useful just to try and kind of break each of those things down. But I think, I said this in the original post about anxiety disorders is, the reality is, in terms of resources that are available to parents, it is quite limited, and not everybody is in a position to spend £40-50 a session for over maybe 10 sessions, because it can be that can be quite an expensive route, and it's just not available to every single person, and I really recognise that. One of the kind of areas that I'm a kind of bit of a champion of is about delivering therapy online. I actually do a lot of Skype therapy, and for a lot of people, it's not just about being able to access therapy one-to-one. It's just, particularly with anxiety, they just feel safer. But I started to research other kind of options and what was out there, and there's a lot of different things you can buy into for anxiety, but I wanted to find something that was, because I know CBT works and I know it's effective, and I wanted to find a program that parents could access that was, I guess, cost effective, but still delivered the same results. And whilst I was writing, I mentioned earlier, I was studying sort of child and teenage anxiety, and whilst I was writing the research paper, I came across a program called Brave Online. And what I really liked about that was, it did take away this kind of, it made it cost effective. It was also taking away kind of barriers to attend. So some children might be terrified to go to a therapist, and this is not interacting necessarily with a therapist, but it has been developed by a very highly skilled team of professors. And it's just, I guess, a more relaxed way of maybe introducing treatment to children who have perhaps not had any treatment at this stage. And, they're used to computers, they're used to iPads, they're used to phones. This feels like technology that they will be comfortable working with. So the Brave programme, as I said, is an online programme, and it's a CBT-based programme, which was actually developed from a clinic-based CBT approach for childhood anxiety. So it's taking what was happening in, face-to-face and creating the content for an online programme. And it was actually developed by a team of researchers at University of Queensland in Australia, and led by Susan Spence, who I've not actually had the privilege of meeting yet, but an incredible woman who has done an incredible amount of work and research into this programme and others in terms of working with childhood anxiety. She's a real expert in her field, and she's kind of paved the way of bringing, I guess, bridging the gap of therapy face-to-face and online, but something that's actually evidence-based. So she's created two different programmes, and I think it's really important that she's done that. So one programme looks at kind of 8 to 12-year-olds, and the other programme looks at teenagers, because their issues are always going to be slightly different, aren't they, because of their age groups. What I love about this programme is this isn't just for your child or your teenager, this is also for you. So this is a bit of a journey that you embark upon with your child. You will get so many sessions, as will your child. And it's all online and it's fun. But, all those things that I was talking about in terms of physiological cognitions and the behaviour, they're all attended to within the sessions within this programme for each of the child or the teenager. I think what's also really important is there is a huge amount of evidence in terms of research of this particular programme to kind of support childhood anxiety, and this programme actually being an effective tool and resource to treat that. So how Brave works, there's 10 sessions for your child, and it's basically the way therapy would be structured. So you'd be looking at them doing this once a week. There's 5 sessions for parents. I think there's 5 sessions, for the teenage parents, and there's 6 sessions for the 8 to 12-year-olds group. And you will be instructed in terms of what sessions you participate in. So you have different logins. The child does their bit and you do your bit. There's also booster sessions that are added in after a month and 3 months, just to see and follow up on treatment and to see if those strategies are still working for you. I think the beauty of this is it's something that you can do together. It's something that can be completed at home. It's 40 to 60 minutes a week. But it's also something, if you need more time, it needs more time, because you can do that at your own pace. But what I would say is, if this is something that you end up doing, the programme works if you go through the entire process. So you go through the 10 weeks, and because you might start to notice quite a quick difference, quite a quick shift in your child, probably in a few sessions. But stick it out, do the full 10 sessions, because then this stuff will really stick with your child, and it will really help them. As I say, it's web-based, and it's pretty straightforward to operate in terms of once you log in, you'll get your lesson, you'll get an email reminder every kind of week. You log in, do your session, and then there will be assignments. CBT is very homework based, so there will be things for your child to do, and you will be instructed in terms of how to support your child. And I think that's the kind of crux of the actual programme. As I say, it's fairly easy it's not fairly easy, it is easy to use. And it guides you through the process of each session. So it's the same structure as you would be essentially having one-to-one with a therapist, but you're just not having that one-to-one. So you're online and you work through that. So I think it's a fantastic tool, and that's why I want to talk to you a wee bit about it today. And I'm going to go through it a wee bit in terms of structure in a second. So I'm just going to talk a little bit about the actual content in terms of BRAVE. You'll actually see it's an acronym there, so it stands for Body Signs, Relaxation, Activate Thoughts, Victory Over Your Fears, and Enjoy and Reward Yourself. So it's a lovely programme in terms of really looking at all those different types of training, looking at the physiological symptoms, looking at being able to calm, looking at avoidance, looking at the thoughts that are associated, and really about rewarding positive reinforcement and getting you and your child really together on this. There is more detail in terms of the parent sessions, which I guess gives the parent a bit more information on childhood anxiety and how to manage child and the work that we're doing in terms of relaxation and cognitive restructuring and the graded exposure. That's probably maybe the most challenging part of the 10 weeks is coming up with the ladder of fears, and it's really working through to make sure that where they start isn't too terrifying, but also their end goal is also quite stretched so that they can sort of work through feeling their anxiety. I think this is an amazing programme, and I'm so glad I came across it while I was doing my research, because I came across a lot of stuff. And from the last information that I had, 22,000 children have successfully used the BRAVE programme, and I am now very lucky to have the licence for this programme in the UK, which is wonderful. So I feel like, because there's such difficulty in terms of how people access help and what's available to them, and the reality of parents not having the financial resources to be able to pay for one-to-one therapy. For me, BRAVE feels like something that bridges the gap, and I really hope you agree. I think it's a fantastic programme, and it certainly does deliver results for children and for parents. So just a reminder, did touch on this a wee bit at the beginning, but just in case you're starting to feel that BRAVE might be something you're interested in, it is specifically designed for children with separation anxiety, social phobia, specific phobia, and generalised anxiety disorder. It's not suitable for treating panic disorder, OCD, or PTSD. However, if that isn't a primary diagnosis, there possibly may be some strategies in the programme that might help them, but it's probably worth having a discussion first before you purchase it to make sure that this is something that is right for you. So just a summary of our kind of resources available to you. If you've got any concerns, go and speak to your GP, tell them what's happening, take your child and see what resources the GP can have and offer. Some GP surgeries do actually have CBT counsellors within their surgery, but they can refer you for therapy. Again, the waiting lists are quite long, but it's at least it's worth putting yourself on the list in the interim. My experience with school was positive, but again, the school is under-resourced in terms of what could be actually done. But engage with your school. If you've not already, speak to school and let them know what's happening to your child. This won't be the first time a teacher's experienced that, and maybe they'll have some experience that they can pass on to you also. The school will also help you, as well as the GP would, if you need to be referred to CAMH in terms of the Children and Mental Health Services. Again, depending on what area you live in, that can be quite a long waiting list, but also worth to try it. Obviously, there's options in terms of private one-to-one therapy. That can be done face-to-face. It can be done Skype. It can actually be done on the phone as well, depending on what your child's preference is. And then, self-help. So I'm going to send you a sheet of resources, which will just be on PDF, but it's a list of different websites and different places to kind of source information on anxiety, because information is powerful. And then there's also what I was talking about earlier in terms of supported self-help online therapy. So there's a couple of ways you can do Brave as well. So you can do Brave just as an online kind of self-help, but you can also do Brave with therapeutic support. So you can buy the package of Brave, and then you can also add in an hour or two. You probably wouldn't need any more than 2 hours sort of phone or Skype support to work through the programme, but it's an option for you. So I think that about covers the resources. I'm going to send a couple of different PDFs over to you, so that you've got a kind of list of this, and you've got a crisis support team. If you're in crisis, please reach out to these services. Talking isn't a crisis support service, but there are many services out there who are well equipped to deal with crisis. And I'll also send you what was the other thing I was going to send? The kind of some of the videos that came across, just some funny ones actually about teenagers dealing with anxiety, and I hope you enjoy them. So that brings us to the end of today's presentation. Hope you've enjoyed it. We've covered off quite a lot in terms of anxiety disorders, what anxiety is, where it comes from, and how we can help, and the different options that are available to us, in terms of also what CBT can do. I would love to hear some feedback. If you've got time, just to put me an email back to say what you liked, what you didn't like, what you'd like to know more of in terms of delivery of information. If you do have any questions, pop me an email, nicola@talkingrooms.com. If you do feel like you're ready to have a conversation about therapy, whether that be booking one-to-one sessions, having a Skype session, or you're interested in utilising the Brave programme, then please email me. I'll send you some more information on that. And lastly, thank you very much. I have been overwhelmed and humbled, I have to say, since I put that little post on last week, by the sheer volume of people who contacted me to say that they were really struggling and what was happening with their child. And I want to do as much as I possibly can to help you and your child come out the other side of this. So I appreciate we're all very busy, and thank you for taking the time to listen. I hope it's been useful, and any feedback would be welcome. Thank you, and good luck.